The deserts stretched endlessly, its sands carrying the weight of my own silence. Every grain was a memory, every dune a question I had left unanswered. I came riding, not as a prince, not as a falcon, soaring free, but as a man burdened with the whispers of his past. And those whispers led me here, to the home that once held my heart, now standing quiet, forgotten, wrapped in shadows of neglect. The door was still the same, wood aged with patience, nails rusted like the years between us. Yet when I touched it, the pulse of memory beat beneath my palm, as though the house itself remembered my name. I paused, for silence is heavier than words, and in that silence I heard her laughter, echo, faint but alive, a sound buried deep in the walls, a whisper of a home that refused to forget. She had once filled this house with light, her footsteps like dawn breaking across the floor. Her presence turned every stone into poetry, every window into a promise of return. But I had been blinded by crowns, by journeys, by ambition. I thought love could wait forever, that a home could stand eternal, even when the heart that built it was left to stand alone. Now the windows looked at me with tired eyes, the courtyard breathed with silence instead of song, and I wondered, how many nights did she wait by the lamp, chasing my name in the shadows? How many mornings did she wake alone, whispering prayers into the air, hoping the desert would carry them to me? The weight of absence was carved into these walls, and as I walked through the threshold, it carved itself into my chest, deeper than any sword had ever cut. I sat in the courtyard, the place where she once poured water for the jasmine, where her hands once moved like blessings over everything they touched. Those hands had built this home with love, brick by brick, patience by patience. I could almost see her there, kneeling by the garden, her hair catching the sunlight, her lips whispering to the flowers, as though they too were children of her heart. And I had taken those hands for granted, hands that never asked for jewels, hands that only asked for mine in return. I had filled them with promises, but left them empty when the time came to keep them. Now the wind touched my face, soft and trembling, as if her hand still reached for me, through the silence of years, and I bowed my head, ashamed to realize that love is not measured by kingdoms won, but by the gentle strength of the one who waits. Night fell, and the house seemed to breathe. Its silence was not emptiness, but a whisper carried across time. I leaned against the wall, and closed my eyes, and there it was, her voice, faint yet eternal, not in anger, not in blame, but in tenderness. It spoke like the desert wind. You have returned. I wanted to weep, to let my tears water the earth beneath me. For though the house looked forgotten, though the world had changed, the essence of her love remained. It lingered in every brick, it hummed in every corner, it breathed through the silence. And I knew then, this was not just a house, not just walls and doors. It was the sanctuary of her soul, the echo of her patience, the monument of her devotion. And no matter how far I had wandered, her whispers had never stopped calling me home. The moon hung above the courtyard, a silver lamp for the forgotten night. Its light spilled across the broken tiles, and I felt as though it was showing me every crack I had caused with my absence. The jasmine still clung to life by the window, its fragrance faint yet defiant, like her patience that must have endured storms. I never returned to calm. I walked slowly through the rooms, my footsteps echoing like confession. Every corner carried a memory. Every wall was painted with silence too deep to bear. Here she once sang softly while weaving cloth, her voice sweeter than any oud beneath desert skies. Here she once lit a lamp for me, waiting until my shadow appeared on the horizon. Here she once prayed, not for herself, but for me, that my path be safe, that my heart be steadfast. And I let the world take me. I let distance replace presence, until her prayers turned into unanswered whispers. Now I return, and I do not come to claim. I come to kneel, to let the dust of this home write my story. I place my hand on the threshold, the same threshold I had once crossed as a husband. But tonight I cross it as a beggar, a seeker of mercy, a man who has finally learned that love is the only crown worth wearing. I whisper into the night, my beloved, I am here, not with excuses, not with promises of kingdoms, but with the truth of my heart, raw and bare. Forgive me, if forgiveness still lives within you, and if it does not, let me still sit by your door. For even silence with you is richer than glory without you. The house did not answer, but the night carried my words into the wind, and I knew she would hear them, even if she never stepped into the light. The desert is honest. It does not hide what time leaves behind. Every footprint stays until the wind decides. Every whisper lingers until silence claims it. And as I sat within her forgotten home, I felt the desert holding up a mirror to me. It showed me the man I once was, restless, proud, chasing horizons without looking back. And it showed me the man I am now, bent by longing, carried here by regret, but alive with a truth I can no longer escape. I touched the stones of the wall, cold against my fingertips, and I remembered her hands pressing these same stones, her breath steady, her eyes dreaming of a life with me. This house was never bricks and clay, it was her soul carved into shelter, her devotion made visible. I whispered to the wind, if she no longer waits, if her heart has locked its doors, still let this home forgive me, for I am its child too, a wanderer who abandoned his own sanctuary. The wind carried no answer, but the stars above seemed to bow lower, as if listening to the silence between me and her forgotten voice. Night deepened, and I lit a small lamp I found upon the shelf. Its flame flickered, and in its light I saw her face everywhere, on the walls, on the floor, in the shadows, not in portraits, but in memories that refused to fade. She had once sat beside this same lamp, her eyes lowered over threads of fabric, her fingers weaving not just cloth, but the fabric of our life. Every stitch was a prayer, every color a dream, every fold a whisper of tomorrow. And I had let her weave alone, the cloth of our love torn by my absence, the patterns unfinished, because I was not there, to give her the thread of my presence. Now, as the lamp trembled in the wind, I felt her nearness, like a fragrance that clings even when its source is gone. Her voice rose in my memory, do not forget where you belong. The flame bent lower, but I cupped my hands around it, protecting it from the wind, as though protecting the last whisper of her. For if the flame died, I feared her memory would leave me too. So I bowed before the small light, promising into the silence, never again will I let your flame falter. The floor was covered in dust, soft layers that time had placed gently, like a shroud, over forgotten beauty. I knelt and touched it, and my fingers came away marked, as though the house itself was writing its memory upon me. I thought of her prayers, how she knelt in this same place, her forehead to the earth, her whispers rising to the heaven. Perhaps the dust remembers those prayers, perhaps the air still carries them, unanswered yet eternal. I lowered my own forehead to the ground, and in that dust I prayed too, not for crowns, not for triumphs, but for her forgiveness, for a chance to give back one moment of the love she had given endlessly. Tears fell, mixing with the dust, turning it to clay, as though together she and I were remaking the foundation of this home. And in that moment, I realized, homes do not die. They sleep, they wait, they whisper until love has the courage to return. I rose with the weight of silence on my shoulders, but within that silence was hope. For even the dust, even the smallest corner of this forgotten place, had remembered me. And if the house remembers, Perhaps she remembers too. The night was heavy with silence, yet within that silence lived 1,000 voices. The house spoke to me in sighs, the walls breathed with secrets, the courtyard trembled with the memory of footsteps that no longer walked its path. I stood before the door of her room. It was closed, not locked, but closed with the weight of years. I raised my hand to knock, yet my fingers froze in the air. What right did I have to disturb the peace of a woman I had wounded with absence? Still I whispered to the wood, as though it could carry my words to her heart. Beloved, do you hear me? I am not here to claim, not here to reopen wounds. I am here to return, as a man who has learned that the greatest journeys end where they began, at the door of the one who never left my soul. The wood felt warm beneath my palm, as though her hand once placed there still lingered in the grain, and for a moment I imagined she stood on the other side, listening, breathing, perhaps even forgiving. The desert winds howled outside, but within these walls there was only stillness, and I wondered, was her silence a punishment, or was it a mercy too deep for words? I bowed my head against the door, and let the weight of my body lean upon it. If it opened, I would fall into her mercy. If it remained closed, I would still remain, for even her silence was more sacred than the world's applause. The house whispered again, not in anger, but in patience, and I knew the choice was no longer mine. It was hers. I had returned, now I could only wait, a pilgrim at the threshold of her forgotten love. The night gave way to dawn, a pale light creeping into the courtyard, painting the stones with gold, as though the sky itself wished to bless my return. I had waited all night by her door. Every hour stretched like a lifetime, every silence pressed heavier against my chest. Yet I did not move, for where else could I go, if not here? Then, just as the first bird sang, the door creaked, not wide, but enough for light to spill across the floor, enough for my heart to break and heal in the same breath. She appeared, veiled in simplicity, her presence more powerful than any crown I had worn. Her eyes met mine, eyes no longer young, but deeper, carved with years of patience and pain. They were oceans, and I was a drowning man, seeking shore. I lowered myself to the ground, forehead pressing against the dust of her threshold, and in a voice broken but true, I whispered, "Beloved, forgive me. I have returned not as a ruler of men, not as a falcon of the skies, but as a man stripped bare, carrying nothing but the truth of his heart." For a moment, there was only silence, and in that silence, my soul trembled like a leaf in the storm. Then her hand, it reached out, soft yet strong, and touched mine. No words, no accusations, no demand, just a touch, a bridge across years of absence. My tears fell onto her hand, and in their salt I tasted both regret and redemption. The house seemed to breathe again. The jasmine stirred as though awakened. The walls glowed with the warmth of her mercy. For love, I learned, is not always loud. Sometimes it is a whisper, sometimes a silence, sometimes a hand reaching out at dawn, restoring a man to the home he never truly left. And in that moment, I knew the forgotten home had forgiven me, and its whispers would live forever, not as echoes of sorrow, but as hymns of love, stronger than time.